Election Day is Tuesday, November 6th, and CMU Public Broadcasting again brings you Meet the Candidates, the election year series that gives you the chance to meet those seeking state and national office.
Support of WCMU is provided by Flint Institute of Arts, presenting Drawing Together International Cartoons. The exhibition features 300 cartoons from the Iden Doan Foundation International Competition and runs through December 30th. FlintArts.org.
Hello and welcome again to this edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm David Nicholas, and this time we are joined by Mike Huckleberry. He is the Democratic candidate for Michigan's 70th House District. A former state representative for this office, elected to that in 2008, he is now seeking a re-election back to that office for what would be a second term. Mr. Huckleberry, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It is a chance then, first of all, in our first few moments for you to get reacquainted with the voters, let them know a little bit about your personal background and also experience that you bring to the campaign.
David, I'm a small business owner from Greenville. My wife and I have owned a restaurant called Huckleberry's for 20 years. We're very proud to be small business owners. I did serve in the state legislature for 2 years. I was very honored to do so. My wife and I have 5 children. We have 4 grandchildren. I want to get back into public service. I feel very strong that Michigan is starting to head in the right direction, but I believe that a small business owner's attitude and small business owner's grit can help move us in that correct direction.
District 70 then, the map of that, as we said, you had been elected in 2008, then with the 2010 census and the redrawn lines. How is District 70 different now than the prior campaigns? Draw that map for us, if you will.
It's very fortunate for me. When I won my seat, I had the lowest Democratic base ever to win a seat in the House of Representatives. I had a 43% base. Under redistricting, I now have a 46% base, so I gained considerably on that. What they did under redistricting was eliminated 4 townships in Ionia County, and they added 4 in Gratiot County. Those counties being, or townships being Seville, Pine River, Bethany, Emerson, and that includes St. Louis and Alma. That's a good advantage for me that I picked up that much, a lot of progressive thinking people in that area.
Then, as you have been campaigning for this office once again, traveling around this redrawn district, what are you identifying, first of all, as the primary issues in this campaign?
Well, jobs have always been, when I say always, for several years now. Michigan has been crippled with the auto industry, what's happened to that over the years. Now, Michigan is seeing a resurgence because of the automobile pickup, and that's a good thing. Jobs is real important, always have been and always will be. I think that we're hearing, I know we're hearing a lot. People are becoming aware of the new tax increases that don't take place until January. We're going to see $1.9 billion in tax increases. Some people will lose as much as $3,000 when these new tax laws come into effect. I'm very concerned about it myself. These were designed to not start until after the election, and in my opinion, to fool people into making their votes, and then, whoa, come January, we call it the January surprise. I didn't know I lost my homestead property tax exemption. I didn't know I lost my $600 child credit. I didn't know my pension was going to be taxed. I didn't know that the poor neighbor next door to me lost his earned income tax credit, and all the credits that, charity credits that have been eliminated. This is going to be not good for our economy. You cannot take $1.9 billion out of an economy that is consumer-driven and not see a negative effect next year.
When you ran and won in 2008, we were obviously at a severe economic downturn. There have been the events that have come since, the changeover in the leadership in Lansing and so forth, but we still would want to, as a former state holder, ask this somewhat from the standpoint of not only incumbent but challenger at the same time. The pieces of legislation that you would point to, first of all, from that first term in office, where you would pick up from those, and specific new initiatives that you would bring to in addressing these economic concerns if elected here in 2012.
I've always been a champion of education. I have an impeccable voting record on education. I believe education is absolutely perhaps the number one, not perhaps, without a doubt, the number one way out of the economic problems we have in Michigan. we're not just competing with China and Mexico. We're competing with Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio. Our students have to be educated. I would never have supported the $1 billion cuts that have been made to education. This is a step backwards. Our students don't get another chance to be in the 3rd grade or the 8th grade or the 10th grade. These cuts are going to prove devastating, and they're wrong. I was a champion when I was in office for education. I will be a champion to help reverse these devastating cuts to our state.
When people talk about paying for a tax cut or paying for tax credits that are issued or looking at the overall picture of the balanced budget, what choices were made that you would seek then to reverse if you feel that then the funds that you're talking about need to be reinstated to education? Where would you then find, because we are constitutionally bound to the balanced budget, how would you specifically address that?
We needed a more balanced approach. There was no one, including Mike Huckleberry, that didn't understand that we needed to do something. A balanced approach, a shared sacrifice. We heard a lot about shared sacrifice. The only sacrifice being made is the middle class. That's the only sacrifice. Corporations, big corporations, they call them small businesses, but they're talking about large corporations, very successful ones, in fact, that have done well in this economy, received $1.8 billion in tax giveaways. We have to go after that. That's just uncalled for. And I never voted for a tax increase because I don't like pointed tax increases. If we have to do that, it has to be a broad base and everybody has to share in the sacrifice. We didn't do that under this administration. This was all in favor of what I consider campaign donors, and it needs to be flattened, it needs to be fair.
When we look at the larger businesses versus the small, others that have come before you in this series, been talking about the advantage that was seen in dealing with the Michigan business tax, the substitute that came from the single business tax of years ago. At this juncture, in terms of the tax structure, how that affects businesses from large to small, have we taken the right approach? Does something more need to be done to adjust that tax structure? How best do you see that, especially from the perspective of one operating in a small business as you do?
Well, as I stated, most of these tax breaks were given to large businesses, not Main Street businesses. Main Street business is a restaurant like mine, or the pizza store, or the shoe store, or that's a Main Street business. They didn't get the break. The break should have been shared. There's going to be a lot of talk next year whether to get rid of the personal property tax on small businesses. I couldn't support that if they don't have a replacement, but I understand why we should get rid of it. I think a case could be made that should have been the tax that they went after in the first place, so that every business shared in that tax break and gave every business an opportunity to create jobs.
That would have been more of an across-the-board approach?
That would have been across the board. Everybody would have shared in it. But even then, I would have only supported it if there was a replacement of some sort, because we cannot keep pounding on our schools and our education to pay for these tax cuts to corporations and business. They need educated workforce. They need their customers to have an education so they can have a good job. So right now we're going in reverse on those kinds of actions.
Again, another issue that has come up often, you've already mentioned the importance of education. First of all, on the paying for it, we have come now full cycle through quite a bit of economic change, and when we look at how Proposal A is designed to work based on if the state looks this way versus how it is being practiced now, several districts getting only the base funding, some others still getting way above that. You now have a redrawn district where you maybe have a much different look at different size districts receiving different amounts. What would you do to potentially equalize out that funding, make it more of a balanced approach for all of the schools?
Well, I wish I wish I had a magic board so I could figure all the answers out on this. It's going to take more than one person, and it really comes down to we have to work across the aisle on that. That's a very difficult question. I don't have the magic answer. I wish I did. I don't know if anybody does, because if they did, they'd already have come up with it. I'm the guy that will sit across the table with people from the other party and say, let's find an answer to this, let's make it equitable, and let's make it fair so Michigan can keep moving forward.
What about what has been done so far in the past 2 years, and as you now reapproach this race, the idea that it's being presented that as a more equalized funding model, although Proposal A has not been completely scrapped, but the added incentives that can go for additional funding if districts do more of fitting the five or six different tenets of best practices and transparency and so forth. Is this a good approach, or would you have potentially a different idea?
I don't know if it's a perfect approach, but I don't know if it's 100% bad either. I guess I'd still think that there's some room for improvement, and that maybe it should have been worked on in a more bipartisan approach other than we have control, we're going to do it our way, we really don't care about your input on it, and I believe that's the approach that was taken.
With the added districts that you have now, the different shape to the district, are there any other issues economically or educationally that would not have been, excuse me, as prevalent perhaps from the 2008 to 2010 term that now you look at in a different way as a candidate trying to regain that seat, just based on the fact that you're now talking to a different looking and different shaped district, different groups of voters now that you're hoping to win over?
Well, we've covered education, and you and I have discussed tax fairness, if you will. We didn't have we have a real public safety issue. A lot of the cuts were not just to $1 billion in education, but we've had drastic cuts to revenue sharing. And almost every county in the state has to vote for a tax increase to give themselves proper sheriff protection. That's one of our highest priorities as a legislator, making sure our families are safe. What we have in Montcalm County and Gratiot County just passed it was funding for Sheriff Patrol. Basically what we're doing is voting for a tax increase on top of a tax increase. Our taxes went up, they cut our services, and for us to have the same protection that we did last year, we have to vote for a tax increase. That makes no sense. There's something really lost. And I think a big part of a job creation is a safe working environment for people. Corporations don't want to move to where we don't have safety and safe families. And I think that we didn't have that issue when I was in. We properly funded police and fire protection.
If, as lawmakers that have been there have said, then we can only pay for so much, and here's the approach that has been done, how specifically, where have some of those decisions or priorities gone? You've touched on some of the tax incentives and so forth that have gone one place versus another, but are there other areas that you would say we have been misdirected that you would want a different approach as to how the money is spent, how the money is allocated, keeping us within that, what, quote unquote, what we can afford?
The budget has been balanced. Let me be crystal clear. The budget has been balanced with cuts, devastating cuts. Not the tax increases of $1.9 billion on seniors and homestead property tax. That money was taken and given to the corporations. If we looked at that and said, okay, if we're going to increase taxes, but we have to be truthful with the people and tell them that it's going to go toward education and police and fire protection, most citizens will buy into that and they'll understand it. What we did was we increased taxes, we cut services, important services, things that make us a great society. That whole system has to be looked at. It was a bad mistake, and I think over the next year or two, people are going to realize we're not heading in as good a direction as they think we are.
Economics, education, public safety, all critical issues that many, like you, have identified as primary issues. We certainly appreciate the time that you've taken to address those. In the final moment, if you had to encapsulate all that and put it into one final message for the voters as one who held this office before, wanting to return to that office in Lansing, what would be that final message to the voters?
When I left office, I was rated the second most bipartisan legislator in Lansing. I take pride in being a small independent business person with an independent grit attitude. I take pride in working across the aisle and trying to find the answers to issues and not the party politics that's so often played in Lansing. My voting record verifies that. I believe that my balanced approach to governing and my ability and attitude of wanting to work across the aisle is exactly what Lansing needs now. It was when I was in. I was very well respected by people, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I became chair of agriculture in my freshman term. I worked extremely well with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And agriculture, by the way, is one of our bright spots in Michigan. It stayed bright during the recession, so I was very proud to serve on that and hope to Hope to be back on that committee and fully expect to be. So I guess the final word would be that it's still going to take a bipartisan attitude. It's going to take a bipartisan approach. This I've got control. It's going to be my way or no way is not working. It hasn't worked. It doesn't work at the federal level. It doesn't work at the state level. And Mike Huckleberry has that, understands that, and is willing to reach across the aisle because it's about Michigan. It isn't about our parties.
Well, we do appreciate your time to talk directly to the voters about all of these concerns, and we wish you the best of luck for the rest of the campaign.
Thank you, David.
And thank you for joining us once again here, too, for Meet the Candidates. Our guest has been Mike Huckleberry. He is the Democratic candidate for the 70th State House District, the former state representative, now hoping to regain that seat for a second term here in 2012. All of our segments going to our website, where they'll be posted there at WCMU.org. And for all of us here, we encourage you to get out and exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, November 6th.
Thank you for joining us for Meet the Candidates. CMU Public Broadcasting invited both major party candidates for this office to participate in this series.
Hello and welcome again to this edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm David Nicholas, and we are joined this time by Debra Wirth. She is the Democratic candidate for Michigan's 4th Congressional District. Debra, thanks very much for taking the time to be with us. Welcome.
Thank you, David.
We take our first few moments to do as the program title implies, and that is Meet the Candidates, a chance in the first few moments for you to introduce yourself to the voters, a little bit about yourself, your background, and the experience you're bringing to the campaign.
I am a graduate of Lansing Waverly High School, 70, Michigan State, 74, one of the first graduate of Cooley Law School, 77. I then spent 2 years as an Ingham County assistant prosecutor, and most of my time as a lawyer, 20 years, I've been practicing personal injury law, representing people in their everyday worst situations, trying to even up the playing field in their contest against massive corporations and insurance companies. So to me, it was a natural step to be trying to do the same thing, evening up the playing field for people, this time as constituents.
And for the district itself, we haven't asked this question obviously in a few years, but it's come up now in all of our interviews this time. The district itself, in terms of the changes to and sort of the outline or the map of the 4th Congressional District, the counties, townships, and so forth, if you can kind of mentally draw that map for us and let us know what territory we're talking about.
This time around, Grand Traverse County is no longer the 4th, it's the 1st. And instead, the 4th includes Clinton County. Clinton County, the county seat is St. John's, and that is where I live, Clinton County. I live about 20 minutes from Lansing. And also the southern half of Shiawassee has been included, and Gladwin County has been included. So it's quite a bit different from what it was.
And traveling the district then, as you have, as not only the candidate assessing what the issues are, but obviously talking to the voters, what do you identify as the primary issues of this campaign?
Ooh. Back to talking about what a big district it is, it's hard to have primary issues because the universities, Ferris and you all, Central, have different issues and look at things differently. And then the Clinton, Shiawassee, that are more and more people seeking to have jobs in Lansing and commuters, that's a very different issue. And then the country, and I'm like Wexford, a straight line Wexford across, the country, Mecosta, Gratiot, they have very rural issues where there you want to emphasize the disappointment that we have that the farm bill did not get passed because it got stalled in the House. And then I always consider Midland to be its own different world because it's so connected with Dow. Also, I might want to include in terms of urban issues and the middle class and people being able to grow in the middle class. I have the suburbs, Saginaw County is all strangely carved out. I have the suburbs of Saginaw County, and I would include that in terms of people who want to have solid jobs.
Well, this being a race for Congress, we've seen with many of the state law legislature candidates that we've spoken with, they identify the primary issue as jobs and the economy. We know now that with the conclusion of the debates between the two presidential hopefuls that there was more of an emphasis put on the domestic and the economic, with the one focus on foreign policy. So if those economic concerns, at least from all of the analysis, points to that as the #1 issue. If you look at that then from across the rural concerns, the urban concerns, the spread out nature of this district #4, what would be some of the initiatives you would want to put into place to address some of those key issues when it comes to jobs and the economy?
It is jobs in the economy, definitely. All of them are jobs in the economy. And first of all, what we have in Washington, D.C. right now, we have 240 to 190 Republicans to Democrats, and that's enough to obstruct. And what Mitch McConnell said he wanted to do was obstruct. So they're doing very well because not much is happening. We're on what is called a fiscal cliff. A lot of people have heard what that is. January 1st, 37% of the economy, in terms of the money, is not budgeted to be spent. Also, the tax cuts are going to sunset, and so they will be what they were before the Bush tax cuts. And the combination of the higher taxes on the people that are paying taxes, combined with the uncertainty about all the programs, is what's called the fiscal cliff. Congressional Budget Office estimates that the cliff will shrink our economy 2.9%. And we worked so hard, I mean we, being the administration, Obama administration, worked so hard to get the unemployment down 2 points, from 10 to 8. And to have a shrink in the economy because we just can't cross the aisle and come to agreement, I find unacceptable. And so I hope that what will happen is I will cross when I have to, and I will be firm when I have to. But we've got to get rid of that, first of all. The next thing is the tax cuts. The situation over the tax cuts is, generally speaking, the Democrats, and me too, think it is a good idea to let the taxes go back to the rates that they were under the Clinton administration if you make $250,000 or over. And the Republicans right now are saying, no, if we can't preserve the tax cuts for the $250,000 and over people, then we're not going to have any tax cuts at all, and there we go on the cliff. Well, I disagree with that.
How quickly would we be getting to that? When you say basically January 1, we know an election is in November. There will be a lame duck session, then we get to basically the swearing in, which is just into the brand new year. How would any freshman lawmaker, anyone that is running as a challenger in a race, someone as yourself, how would, in taking office, be able to immediately address to keep us from approaching that situation as you described it?
However it shakes down, and it's so scary, but however it shakes down, there will be a plan by, let's say that we have a less gridlocked, more even Congress. There will be a plan with the Democrats, and I will follow the plan. I don't know how, I mean, it's awful to me, and it's hard to imagine that we could have gone this far. But we will come up with something, and I will go through with something and resolve it.
What are party folks telling you in terms of expectations for, and of course everyone wants to be victorious and everyone wants a majority, that's universal to both parties, but what are they looking at in terms of realistic numbers and then balancing that with wherever the race for the White House goes in terms of being able to address a plan, whether it's from a majority standpoint or a minority standpoint in the numbers in Congress, or depending on who is occupying the White House as we roll over into 2013.
And your question is, what am I being told?
Yes.
How's it going to shake? I'm not being told. I don't know. The DCCC, or the country party, Obama, has targeted 50 races. And I will say I'm not in one of the 50. I have heard from a voter that there is polling being done in the 4th District, and I said to him, well, I am not the one paying for the polling, so apparently Mr. Camp's people know a little bit more about at least the 4th District race than I do. But we're just trying as hard as we can to win everywhere, me included.
And if we look at that as perhaps the most immediate pressing issue because of the timetable associated with it, if we take in a sense, a step back to something that is not as urgent, but then also the step forward to something more long-term economically, what do you as a candidate, what do voters within the 4th District that you're talking to say is their concern if that crisis can be dealt with in whatever fashion, long-term, jobs and economy, your ideas, your initiatives that you'd like to see put forth, and what are the voters telling you they would like to see you do if elected as their representative?
You're right. That is a crisis. And then when you're done with the crisis, we've got the thing that got us into the crisis, which is the fact that we're spending a heck of a lot more money than we're making. First, if we can have the wealthy pay their fair share, both through income tax, personal income tax, and also through looking at and I would advocate raising the capital gains tax, because I don't understand why when your money makes money, you're taxed at a lot lower rate than if you sweat and make it yourself. I don't get that. But when we're done with that, then where do we spend the money? And the Obama budget, President Obama talked about this last night in the debate, has asked for less money in his proposed budget than the Republicans. I think it's a better idea to cut down on defense. I think that's a good place to make cuts. I think that we should aim for a goal of for every dollar that we get in higher taxes, we cut $2.50. And that plan ought to be taking us in the right direction. That ought to, I think he said, I think it's a $4 trillion if we work on it and if we get there. I want to follow the plan. But, for instance, under the Ryan budget, there's a lot of things that I oppose. For instance, totally no way of trading vouchers for Medicare. I have a 92-year-old aunt that I talk about who is a lovely, wonderful woman, Aunt Agnes Wirth, and I can't imagine how Aunt Agnes is going to sell her voucher. Who is going to buy it? Who is going to insure a 92-year-old woman for health care? To me, it makes no sense at all. I oppose that. Medicaid being cut by a third, this is what the Ryan budget proposes, being cut by a third and then block granted to the states. We as Michiganders can't deal with that on a third less than what it is now. I oppose that. Will there have to be some cuts here and there? Probably. But first, like I said, first let's have people pay their fair share in taxes and see what we can do. And also, what I think is very important, which I disagree, not necessarily with Rep. Camp, but with some Republicans on, is the need to go slowly. The ship is big. It's like turning a ship around. You can't do it without hurting our economy. And we are making progress. We wish the Democrats, President Obama, we wish we were making progress faster. But we are making progress. And let's not have a couple of real sudden jump starts that put the recovery in danger.
With some of those overall ideas and the view of where we are, where we're going, and some of the specifics that you mentioned in support of and in opposition to the primary budget plans. If we look then at that issue of economy, jobs, which you've identified as the primary, and then take the step back to say, what is the lasting message you want to leave with the voters? This is the way we sum up these conversations. What is that last word you want to leave with them as they get set to go to the polls? What is that message you want to give to the voters of the 4th District?
About the economy. Yes?
About you as a candidate and why you hope to get their vote, the sum up message that you would have as their candidate, the one that is asking for their vote on November 6th.
I think that we also have some pretty crazy issues going on with regard to women's rights. I don't see there being any excuse to try to take away our 9th Amendment rights. But your questions have been about the economy, and I think everybody agrees, certainly on the federal level, that the economy is the main issue. Although Rep. Camp did vote to defund Planned Parenthood, and although he did vote to against the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, however, versus the economy, on the economy, what I just said, people paying for their fair share taxes first. He also, Rep. Camp also wants to do tax reform. I agree that tax needs to be reformed. I don't think we should necessarily trust a hardline Republican to do the tax reform. Tax cuts, tax reform if it is done in the right way, preserving our safety net, and keeping in mind that, to me, the middle class are the job creators. I ran a business for 20 years. It was a law practice. What would make me hire people is other people that had money in their checking accounts that want to hire a lawyer. It's pretty simple stuff. We've tried the part with the trickle down. They are not the job creators. We've tried that. The middle class is job creators. Get the middle class solid and going. Support collective bargaining, because again, you need to have an evening of the playing field between regular people and gigantic corporations. Have the middle class solid again, support collective bargaining, take care of people who need a helping hand, which is what a safety net is. People who need a hand, don't forget about them, and go slow.
Well, we do appreciate your time, the specifics on those, and the big picture on those issues, and we wish you best of luck with the rest of the campaign. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, David.
And thank you for joining us as well. Here on Meet the Candidates, our guest has been Debra Wirth, the Democratic candidate in the 4th Congressional District race here in Michigan. All of these being posted to our website at WCMU.org, and as always, we leave you with a message that we encourage you to go out and exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, November 6th.
This has been Meet the Candidates, a production of CMU Public Broadcasting. Both major party candidates were invited to participate in this series. For a complete listing of the air dates and times for this series, or to watch or listen to this program again, go to our website, WCMU.org.
Support of WCMU is provided by Flint Institute of Arts, presenting Drawing Together International Cartoons. The exhibition features 300 cartoons from the Iden Foundation International Competition and runs through December 30th. FlintArts.org.